Okay, welcome to week 5 of the fourth quarter of English 12. This week is a really interesting week that a lot of students love because it combines history and some really fascinating things that have happened to Americans, and kind of the focus is on Great Britain um, with the literature that came out of World War One that is often very emotional and very powerful. So this week we'll have shorter readings, but hopefully you will think more deeply about them and learn a lot about the history of the modern era and war, um, specifically what was called the Great War or World War One. So we'll start with this glossary of literary terminology. We're going to focus on some literary terms, and you're going to be demonstrating that you understand some of these. So take a quick review of this glossary. You're going to watch 200 countries, 200 years in 4 minutes. It's just a really interesting YouTube video that explores what has happened in our history. And notice when it gets to World War One, notice how the population dips and how many people were killed and affected by that uh, very tragic war. Then you're going to watch this World War One, kind of a brief overview history lesson. You'll read a couple of literary discussions on World War One and how it is represented in literature and art. So there's a link there. And then you'll view this World War One photo essay. And also very fascinating and very tragic. But World War One was the first time that photographers were able to capture what was going on during the war on a larger level. So there were lots of photos coming out of the trenches and out of the war itself that are really interesting to look at. And then you're going to post 3 things that you learned from these resources. So just 3 things that really stood out to you, some insight, and you can either do 3 separate sticky notes on the Padlet, or you could just do one long one. Either way is fine. Then we're going to move on to doing some exploration of poetry of World War One. You're going to read this first poem called "The Things That Make a Soldier Great" by Edward Guest. And then you'll listen to this audio reading of Dulce et Decorum Est, and you'll learn what this Latin term means. And then you're going to read the poem as well. So you'll read and listen to it being read to you. And then you're going to watch this World War One poetry comparison, where I take both of these poems and compare them and kind of talk about the differences in tone and discuss them. Then you're going to vote here which poet you believe was a soldier and why. Then there's a quiz for the general group and the tier 1 group. And the main assignment this week is this choose your own World War One poem to analyze in a Google presentation. And because this is a little bit different the way it's set up, I want to walk you through that. So let's open up this assignment. This assignment tells you that you will follow the directions on this worksheet. And you need to follow them really carefully so that you're not submitting the worksheet itself. You're going to be submitting a presentation, and I've made a template for you to use, and you can make a copy of the template and present and submit that. So open up the worksheet, and you're going to want to read the directions really carefully. The first thing you'll do is read it all the way through. You'll see that you are going to be choosing a poem, and you're going to be analyzing it based on some of these literary terms. I've given you a list of some suggestions, but you can choose others from the glossary as well. And then I've given you websites to look for poems. I want you to read a variety of poems before you choose the one that you want to focus on in this. And then you'll be looking at the following things: the poet and the title of the poem. You're going to summarize the poem, talk about it, what it means, and then analyze 3 different literary devices and give us a brief biography of the poet and talk about how events in this poet's life may have affected and be reflected in the poems. And this is how it will be graded. But you're not filling this out. In fact, you can fill it out for yourself, but what I will be grading is this Google presentation. So open this link and you will see a template. You can go up to File and make a copy of this presentation. Let's start at the beginning. And then you'll change it. So World War I poetry analysis, put your name there, of course. And then for each of these slides, you're going to change it. So you'll put the name of the poet and the title of the poem. You'll replace that. And then look for images of the poem or something related to it or the poet and include that. Look in Flickr and search in the Creative Commons under Advanced Search to look for images that you can use. You can also look in Google itself. If you insert image, you can search Google Drive for images that would be acceptable to use in your presentation. So that's a good way to do it too. So you'll start there, you'll move on, you're going to give a summary of the poem, and I've given this template for you to use in your summary so that you can have an idea of what I'm looking for in the summary. Of course, you're going to need to change it depending on the poem. You're going to talk about what the poem means, and of course fill this in. And then you're going to choose 3 different literary devices. You will just cut this and instead write, you'll delete what I've written and just write metaphor or simile or imagery or whatever. Just write the literary device that you want to use. And then I want you to discuss that in depth, giving an example, at least one example from the poem, quoted directly, and then a discussion of that. So you'll do that 3 times with 3 different literary devices and just change the name. You're going to give a biography of the poet, and you can do a search or you can look in the Pioneer Library, which has some excellent biography resources. And then at the end, I want you to list your sources. So you'll list the poem itself. You'll list any images that you use. You can just do the URL to those images, and you'll list the resources that you looked for as you researched the author. And then you will just share that link with me for your assignment for 5.3. Let me know if you have any questions on that. Okay, we'll go back to this. That is it for week 5. It should be a powerful, interesting week. Thanks for listening to this long introduction, but I hope it was helpful. And let me know if you have any other questions.